Well, happy whatever day it is that you're watching us. This is Richard Rosen on behalf of Green Burial Manitoba. Our role here for Green Burial Manitoba is to bring education and awareness. And today with us for part two is Marnie Courage. And Marnie is the CEO and inclusion specialist of Enabling Access. And they are your ability and inclusion specialists here in Winnipeg. So a little bit before we get right into the interview, and I'll be really quick, and I want to make sure everyone's got their fresh cup of coffee or whatever it is that you want to have to drink. We're going to share about 20 minutes together. Green Burial Manitoba, what are we and what are we all about? We have been around as a Facebook page since February 2021. And our role is really to help people to learn and understand about green burials and natural funerals, talking about home funerals as well, encouraging people to learn more and share within their communities in Manitoba to other cemeteries and funeral companies of the opportunities of being a lot more sustainable in what they do for your final legacy. And it doesn't stop when your heart does. You might be composting and recycling and doing all those wonderful things when you're alive, but you have to think about what your legacy is going to be. And that's what we and other organizations across the country and across the world actually are here to try to help you with. Green Burial Manitoba is a part of and works with the Green Burial Society of Canada, and we are grateful for all of their support. So with all that said, we jump into part two of our interview with Marnie. So Marnie, thank you for joining us for part two of this conversation.
Thanks for having me back, Richard.
So I know that you've been around for a little bit as an occupational therapist, and Enabling Access is a company that you've founded to help people with resources to be able to do a number of things. So maybe for those who might have missed part one, if you could just touch just briefly on a bit about you and then into the Enabling Access and what it is, and then we'll ask some other questions.
Sure. Well, I'm a born and raised Winnipegger, so grew up here in Winnipeg and started this company as a professional occupational therapist, which is a regulated health profession. I started Enabling Access in 2005. So, we've been around for over 15 years now, and we have 15 staff. We've got a brick and mortar clinic here in River Heights in Winnipeg. So we work in the community supporting individuals, families, seniors, and children, all ages, in optimizing their ability and inclusion. So we have pediatric therapy for kids who have different disabilities or aren't meeting their milestones and families want to help them out. We are going into homes and doing home assessments and making recommendations to improve function and independence for people of all ages. We specialize in understanding progressive disabilities or temporary disabilities and helping people accommodate their environment so that they can adapt their environment so that they're better accommodated. We help people be more independent at work, at school, or whatever it is they do. And as occupational therapists, we focus in self-care, productivity, and leisure, which is taking really a whole person approach, looking at cognition, mobility, spiritual health, and physical health to help people find the solutions they need to live better and to live the way they would like to live.
One of the primary aspects about folks that I've been meeting in the green burial and home funeral movement is independence and control. The independence to be able to do the things that they want the way that they want to, having the control of their own destinies and things. And to be able to stay at home, to work under a palliative care program, to be able to die with dignity at home, to be able to have the home funeral. And, if you think in terms of, there was a time when there was no such thing as a funeral industry, that folks had to take care of their own people and the community had to step up. So in the 2 or 3 days it took for the cemetery to be prepared to dig the grave and to do all of these things, the family could stop their lives, grieve the loss of their person, have the community come and gather. And most of us at those days, we had small houses. Everything was sort of on the level. You might have had a couple of steps up into a stoop or something, and then in you went. And it's different today. We're living, as you mentioned last episode, in these massive houses that are 3 and 4 stories, that lots of stairs that really aren't accessible. And I think we need to think in terms of, when do we start to think about aging in place? And that's one of those critical questions that we kind of left off. So maybe you could talk a little bit about some of those pre-planning things, and when do you start actually having to do that?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because it's like me asking somebody, when are you old? Right? Well, I don't feel old. And I don't want to feel old. So I don't identify as being old. I don't identify as being a senior, or whatever label we're putting on people. So I think we have to take that away. And when we talk about aging in place, we're just talking about creating a lifespan home, creating a home that enables ease of living. And then it opens it up for younger people to also be considering these kinds of adaptations you may need to make to your environment to live out your life in your home. We know home is where the heart is. We know people move houses several times in their lifespan. But what we know now about sustainability is we're hoping that people find homes, modify homes, and stay in homes as long as they wish or are able. And that's what aging in place is. Having access to your health and social supports while being able to stay in your home, in your community, with your neighbors, with your pets, and have that fulfilling life that you want to live within that environment. I think that's key. So when we start thinking about, when do we start thinking about aging in place and adaptations to the home that would enable aging in place? It's right now. It's right now for everyone, because if you wait until you absolutely need it, I know from experience in working with clients that at those times, somebody's usually suffered some kind of change in mobility. There's been a cognitive incident or a declining cognitive health. Maybe a family caregiver is moving away. There's been some kind of change that's precipitating the need to adapt the environment, and it's usually a stressful time. Well, as you know, in any stressful time in life or pre-death, that's a hard time to make big decisions. And so we need the environment to allow and facilitate us to make other important decisions during that time, not structural changes, because those are big, heavy decisions and they cost money. So I would urge people to not think about this as a seniors issue. This is an everybody's issue, to look at their own house. And I would urge the listeners and viewers to just look around them, if they're listening to this from home, to look around their house and think, if I or a neighbor was using a wheelchair, that is just one type of impairment or disability that we want to look at accommodating. But what would be the first problem they would run into? And I'm guessing for most people, it would be not even getting in the house. So then that's where we've got to start, is let's look at our homes from the outside in. How would you get in this home? There's temporary solutions like folding ramps and different kinds of things like that. But once you're in the home, do you have a split level home where you have a foyer right as you walk in, and then there's steps down and there's steps up? There's all kinds of barriers that our environments present to us that we don't realize until we are dealing with an impairment or a temporary disability or a permanent one. So somebody with knee arthritis knows quickly how many stairs they have in their journey between breakfast or getting out of bed and the end of day. And they probably counted those stairs because those stairs hurt. So I know from our existing housing stock now that we don't have enough houses that would facilitate safe and accessible aging in place, which means we need to start renovating the current existing housing stock, and we need to stop building inaccessible homes. That is the message, that even if you don't think you need it now, which you probably don't, somebody in your cohort, somebody in your group, somebody in your community will benefit from those features. It may be, I mentioned last session, it may be a family pushing a stroller, that just being able to ease in and not take the kid out of the stroller, fold up the stroller, walk up the stairs to get into your house. It's ease of living, you know, and so there's many things that we can do to a home. We'll get into that after, but in terms of when to consider, certainly the obvious ones would be if you've had a change in mobility or cognition, where things need to be assessed, because part of what we do is a home assessment that looks at a cognitive screening, physical screening, and environmental scan to see what the accessibility barriers are, and present a report that really looks like at a tailored approach to solutions for you in that home. But it would be to start looking around now and thinking about sustainable choices that you can make to improve the access and safety of your home for you and your community.
I bought a house in 2015. It's an older home. It's a story and a half with knee walls upstairs and really, really steep steps. And the bedrooms are upstairs. So, it's 3 a.m. It's fun to try to have to navigate those stairs. And I already know that as soon as I moved in, that has to change. I knew immediately. And I wasn't thinking so much about the whole house. I was focused on those stairs because they're narrow. Yeah. And to try to widen and doing the things that are going to be necessary, am I going to be able to go upstairs, first off? And I'm sure you've heard those stories of areas of houses that are no longer used because parents can't get upstairs. They've moved a bedroom into another area of the house so that they're on the main floor. So there's a dollar value to this too, isn't there? I mean, to renovate, I know just briefly of some of the stuff that I've done in a house to fix a bathroom, and not even considering for me aging in place, just to buy fixtures and things and changing out a bathtub into a shower. Can you talk a little bit maybe about some of those financial considerations, because that ties into doing it now, because hopefully you've got capital now and not when you're 90.
Yeah, I think you've hit on something that's really important here. Is there's a cost to modifying your home. And so like any investment you're going to make, you're going to look at your return on investment. Where will you get the highest impact? And definitely looking at any main floor bathroom would be a major investment. So think of it as an investment for you and your future. Also, should you decide to sell that house, because of the demand for accessible and safe and houses that are appropriate to age in place, that demand is going up. So you will then have a house that should be increasing in value because the market's going to be asking for it. So those improvements add to the value of your home, but they do cost money. And so when we look at return on investment, or your ROI here, like we would think about as a business decision, it's investing in your entrances, the main floor bathroom, and making sure you have a place on the main floor that could be converted to some kind of a bedroom, even for a temporary scenario. So we look at the cost of those things. And so I'm very feature focused when we talk about recommendations. The aesthetic solutions and finishes are always, homeowner's choice for all of these things, of course. And you can look at your budget and the scope of work, and knowing that if you really want to have a bathroom that would be accessible on the main floor, we're probably looking at a no-step shower. You're probably looking at a vanity or a sink that has knee space under that, so that if you were sitting on a walker or a wheelchair, or just needed to sit on a chair because you had limited endurance, you would have that ability. So some of those kinds of features is what I would be recommending for people who are hoping to age in place, knowing that that value is going to be maintained in that home. And looking at entrance solutions that are aesthetic. Not everybody likes a big, huge ramp at the front entrance when they drive past someone's house and say, that's exactly what I don't want. So let's start talking about creative landscaping, because there's a way to landscape your yard to still build an inclined slope that would be safe and would work and get you to your entrance. But the way where you put bushes and how you landscape that property can make it more invisible. So there's ways to do this. They're out of the box thinking that are not just available online. How do I do this, right? It's first to know what might I need and what kinds of costs are we thinking about. And that's why, like any project, you would get a few quotes from different renovator contractors. But you want to make sure you're comparing apples to apples. And that's where this home assessment, where we look at, here's the features you need in this project. And then I'm able to provide that to the renovator contractors who are quoting. And I can even do a review of those quotes to see have they included those features in there. Because otherwise you're looking at apples and oranges when you're looking at reviewing your contractor quotes. So again, it's about the features that will have the most impact. And when we start talking dollars, yeah, I know people who've renovated their bathroom and it was $30,000 to $40,000. But there are pieces of that bathroom that maybe could wait till later, but here's the big features, the big considerations that you should do now so you don't need to do them later. Because the other things are not a need, they may be a want, or as we have a budget to allow, we will change out that tiling, or we'll change out the toilet, or you'll do different kinds of things. But here are some of the things we can do now that will have a sustainable and long-lasting impact.
Maybe most folks don't think of is the stress that's attached to this. You know, at 56, my stress isn't, I don't carry a stress as well as I did, but still, you have to think about, there's an area of your house is not going to be demolished and it's not going to be accessible. And okay, if it's the bathroom and you've got one in the basement, are you going to be able to get to it? You know, how does that work? And just the stress of the logistics. Maybe it's a bigger project that you can't even be in the house. You've got to find somewhere else to be. And I would guess that you've probably experienced some of those scenarios where folks have really had a challenge in trying to manage through that whole process.
Yeah, what we know about as we age is we handle change. Not, I shouldn't say everyone, but most of us handle change less well than we did when we were younger. So displacement is a major imposition on somebody's daily living. If your bathroom is out of order for 3 weeks while people are working on things, that's going to feel much bigger at 75 or 85 than it does at 45 to 65. Because you will have likely less alternate living places where you can go. You may have less means, disposable income, that kind of thing. So change is hard. And some people just are able to go with the flow and are able to do this really well. And believe me when I say, Richard, that I've worked with some amazing older Winnipeggers who project manage this from the beginning to the end, and they are on the ball and they know what needs to be done, and they have arranged and they've done product research and they've arranged to go live somewhere else while some of these renovations are happening, or they've have other temporary solutions in place. People can do this. It's just not optimal. It's not optimal to do it when you really need it, because like you say, that stress factor of there's usually something else going on. If you really need it, if it's an urgent need, there is way more stress attached to that scenario, and it's harder to deal with change as opposed to doing something preventatively, having that peace of mind that you're making smart choices for your future, your family's future, that your neighbor who now has a progressive disorder and is coming over every day for lunch and is now having a hard time getting to your house, you know, by making this change, you've impacted more than your family, you've impacted your community, and it spreads and spreads. And so then your neighbors come over and love what you've done with your front entrance and think, I'd like to do that with my front entrance. And so this is what we want. This is about creating inclusive communities. But there is a price tag, and other provinces have paid. I know BC right now has a new evolved their HASI program, HASI, which is government funding provided for home adaptations for people with disabilities or who are aging in place. And I believe it's $17,000 to $20,000 per project that this grant allows. There's nothing like that here in Manitoba. We used to have a funded program for small projects for people with low income. That was reduced and eliminated, and so we have some advocacy work to do here in Manitoba. Other provinces in Ontario, there's some other different agencies to tap into for funding. March of Dimes is one of those in Ontario that does fund home modifications. So it depends on where people are living in terms of what resources are available to them. I have compiled some of those resources on one of our websites, the Aging in Place Manitoba website. On the resource page there, we do talk about Canadian funding that's available and some provincial funding. It's a place to start to see what's available, but for most of us, you look at, and it's still up to the homeowner to do this. And so now there's disability tax credits and other types of things you can do for these to recoup some of the costs, but certainly it's a financial investment that we have to be looking at when we're considering how we want to live.
And I just want to reiterate a couple of pieces about that I think that are really important, and is that you really focused on the word investment, because that's really the biggest piece, and it's an investment in your safety and your well-being and your ability to control and be independent. But as you said before, because of our housing stocks, we do not have age in place friendly houses until we actually do that. So when it comes time to sell that house, and if it's the sons and daughters that are doing it, the real estate agent will be able to put that in. And I bet that house will be gone in moments, because it's that timing. Yeah, I think so. I think that's the other piece, is the return on the investment is that other part of it that we don't think that way. I think, I don't know if I'd mentioned it during the interview or before or just privately, but that whole idea of an empty nester is that you have the house that you've designed and have for the kids, and then now the kids are gone. Well, okay, you downsize. That's really, to me, when you start to think, how long are we going to stay here? What should we be doing if we want to stay? What is that plan? And start really doing it then.
And one of the things we help families with is contemplate the modifier move. This is the phenomenon that people are going through. Should we modify or should we move? Mm-hmm. And that's what our team does, is helps folks really look at all of their options and say, we're not trying to get people to age in place. We're trying to support them should they want to do that. If they don't want to age in place and want to downsize and want to move to a condo, then we can help them with that, support that decision, and maybe look at the condo to see, is there some tweaks and adaptations that we can help them do in that condo to make sure that that's as safe as it can be and accessible as you age. But deciding about modifying or moving, the benefit to having that first discussion is at least you start thinking about it. It's like thinking about buying a new house. As soon as a family, a couple, or anyone starts even putting that out into the universe, that maybe we should start looking for another house, we know what happens. The next thing you know, you're with a real estate agent and you're looking at new houses. It's the same thing with the modifications. Once you know what's possible, you start looking at your environment and saying, wouldn't that be nice to have a shelf right beside our door so I could put my keys down so I can open the door when I'm carrying something? Most homes don't have that shelf. That's one of those aging in place, putting a place to put the groceries so I don't have to bend down to the floor. Some of those small little considerations are what can create ease of living and start thinking about how could we do this activity differently. So the way we do that is look, can we adapt the environment? Can we adapt the way the person is doing that activity? Or is there some tool or equipment that can help the person be more successful or independent in that activity? So it's not always really changing the environment, but it might be where people keep, like a lot of people put their deep freezes down in the basement and make it such that they have to go downstairs, get things out of the freezer, carry it in their two hands so that they can't use their hand on the rail to get up the stairs. And one of the considerations with aging in place is thinking about how do we make that easier? What about a smaller freezer that's upstairs that you can access and not storage much up there, whereas you only need to do the big stuff once a month or even less. And so it's thinking about why we have things where we have them. Why is laundry usually in the basement? Why is, and starting to think about homes. Homes are being designed with laundry on the main or second floor now so that it's where you need it. But as we think about getting older and our plans for end of life, the considerations about dying at home or having your palliative care at home, we need to make room for caregivers. We need to make room for support. We need to make room for gathering. And you can do that the same way we would be recommending changes if you were just aging in place and then needing to leave for any kind of medical attention. But it's changes to the bathroom on the main floor, making a space on the main floor that could be adapted into a bedroom, a common space that could be used for your caregiving or healthcare team, or end of life planning, or whatever it is, and having a kitchen that's functional and adaptive so that you maybe are taking a cabinet out from under the sink with folding cupboards so that you could wheel up under it. And I want people to know that the considerations aren't just about being in a wheelchair. This is about changes in vision. This is about changes in cognition. So we start talking about home automation and smart homes. This is a major consideration. This goes into every report I write. Here's what's possible. You may not need it now, but you might want to know about this. This is something you can do to automatically open your door when you know who's there so that you don't have to get up out of your hospital bed, or you don't need to do some of those things. Just some of the automation, we know with the Nest and all of these and Google that they're all working really hard to make things easier so we do less. But when you start layering that onto somebody who already has a progressive disability, it's not just making it easier, it's actually making things possible. And so that smart home technology and automated environment should be really thought about now, because it's not about the wiring necessarily that's needed to do that. It's about thinking of an overall plan that you can adapt as new technology changes, and so that you've got a system that works in that home. And I think we will see more healthcare coming to the home, more being able to have your doctor on your tablet and different things. And we want to make sure you're wired for health at home. That would be another piece of the home modification consideration. And not knowing what's possible. I think that's the hardest part. We don't know what we don't know. So if you ask an expert, doesn't mean you have to go with everything that we're recommending. I will lay out what is possible. And then it's like a life care plan. You have a little bit of a plan that should we need these things, you can come back to that document and look at it and say, right, when that lady was here, she told us about blah, 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 blah. Let's look that up again. I think we need that. It doesn't have to happen all at once. And certainly having a budget with home modifications, we can prioritize where your biggest impacts will be on function and independence. And then here's some nice to haves, and here's some maybes, and here's maybe some other considerations. And that way people can, choose a la carte what they think they want to do for their family.
Yeah, and when you mentioned about the freezer, that I've never understood a chest freezer ever. I remember being a little kid and the cookies were at the very, very bottom and I couldn't reach. And, I'd stand on the stool and then I'm hanging and Dad found me like this, hanging, trying to reach the cookies. And it never made any sense to me. I have a freezer that is a fridge. It's a fridge freezer. It's open and it's on the main floor because I don't want to have to go up and down the stairs. I mean, I can, but I don't want to. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So, those are those little things that you can do very quickly to make a positive change in a very short period of time without a whole lot of money to be investing to do that. So.
And I would caution that when if you're planning any upgrade to a bathroom, especially a main floor bathroom, that is a great time to just ask those questions. What could we do here? So instead of changing it out to these beautiful showers with the gorgeous glass doors, but they have a nice tiled 4-inch step to get over, if you're going to be doing it, why not make it flush? That one consideration, that it doesn't have a step. You may not need it now, but it could present as a barrier from you being able to bathe at home later. And so those are the kinds of things that I just am urging people to look at it. If you're going to already be renovating a bathroom, asking an occupational therapist for features on what they should consider would be very, very wise, so that you're not looking at a retrofit situation 5 or 10 years down. That's the sustainability piece here. And that's having that foresight to know future needs and what considerations somebody might want to look at. Same goes for a toilet. I see people replacing toilets all the time and putting in these tall comfort height toilets, which are great if you're tall. If you're shorter, it becomes a harder thing to get on and off the toilet. So it needs to be tailored for the individual residents, whatever these design features. This is not a checklist. This is not a checklist of here's all the things everybody needs. It's here's some commonly needed kinds of features, but here's specifically what you and your husband or your partner or your family would benefit on based on you. and that seems to really help people out a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Marnie, for all the insight and information. I've certainly learned a lot, and I hope all of our listeners here today have learned some unique and interesting things. And we'll have your information so that if people need to reach out to you, or if they want to find out how to advocate and how to rattle our provincial government's chain to say we need some resources to help us to be able to invest in our homes, to be able to stay home and to continue to live a good life. So, well, thank you again, Marnie. And to all our listeners, again, thank you very much. And for all of your questions and comments, we appreciate all of that you do for us to be here. And we also appreciate anyone who reaches out to us to say, we'd like to hear about such and such, or would you like to interview so-and-so? We think that they'd be able to really contribute something valuable to you. So we thank you again. This is Richard Rosen from Green Burial, Manitoba. Keep safe and keep smiling.